Welcome back to the AI for e-commerce podcast. You've got Max and Andrew here, and we're so excited about this topic. And we were thinking, where's the information source that we wish existed in the world, and we couldn't find it. So we decided to be the change we wanted to see in the world and make our own. If you've never seen us before, we'll do a quick intro. I'm Andrew Lissimore. I was a SaaS executive. I ended up founding an e-commerce company 7 years ago called headphones.com, which is a lot of fun because I love audio gear. And then that spurned another SaaS company called Lantern, which is a Shopify retention stack. And I'll let Max do Max's intro.
If you made it this far in episode 2, I applaud all of you. I'm Max, the founder and CEO of Unveiled. We are an identity resolution and personalization platform. Similar to Andrew's backstory, kind of walked into this by accident, having spent the better part of the last decade in and around commerce. Let's take it away, Andrew. So what are you thinking about today right now? What's top of mind for you?
Let's jump right into this. So I'm thinking, why don't we try to pick what we think is the highest leverage and most actionable thing and talk about that first? So I think something that's on a lot of people's minds right now is GEO. Even if they have never heard that acronym, it's probably still on their minds. So first I'll define that. That's Generative Engine Optimization, and it's like the replacement for SEO, search engine optimization. And I am hearing a lot of people starting to talk about this. And in fact, I was at a 62-year-old golf instructor's office this morning, and I'd found him through an LLM. And so I told him that, and he said, yeah, you know what? I've got one other client who's a tech guy, and I asked him if there's a way for me to make sure I show up on these LLMs. He's like, the tech guy said there's no way to optimize yourself to show up on these things. It's you do or you don't. And I was like, well, that's not true. And I think it's also a really good thing that that's not true. You can attack this problem like you would attack SEO. And in fact, it's probably even more fun and aligned. Before I get into that, though, I just want to say why this matters now. If this isn't on your mind, it really should be. Geo matters now because already the generative engines like ChatGPT and Perplexity and Bing Chat are siphoning 25% of organic clicks away from classic search, so your Googles and your Bings. So the visibility shift is it kind of goes away from this idea of being ranked, which was you wanted to be ranked on Google, and that actually has diminished in value over the years anyway because Google has put a lot of other stuff in their search results page so that organic rankings sometimes don't even show up above the fold, which is like on that first screen you see when you do a search. Sometimes you have to scroll just to get the first organic result. So that free traffic from Google had been being diminished for quite a while, which is too bad because it made it so that you had to spend a lot of money acquiring customers through Google with paid ads. And I think that served their business model just fine. So I think it's nice and hopeful that there's a new framework to think about organic traffic through. But if you think about it, 25% of search is a huge number. That's a lot of searches, and we're just in the first inning. We're like in the first at bat of the first inning right now. So just like the adoption of mobile, I think, still caught a lot of people off guard and was a pretty big transition. It happened pretty quickly. This is happening way faster. So the brands and the agencies that are able to get on top of this today are going to benefit a ton because the strategies around optimizing for GEO, some of them take a little bit of time. So my advice is listen carefully to what we're about to say and make sure that you start today. That advantage that you start building today will compound over time. So the good thing is a lot of the work you did on SEO does transfer to this new world. It's just a little bit different.
Yeah, I think that your golf instructor's other tech customer actually had one of two things right. And the one thing that was right is that it is actually more binary, I think, with GEO than SEO. With SEO, it was you get 10 links, and then there's an easy page 2 with 10 more links and 10 more links and 10 more links. It was up to the end user to ultimately pick the link. Essentially, the result didn't go as far. But with GEO, you're actually being given, it's more binary and more prescriptive. And I think actually the world software in general is moving towards this way based off of who you are, getting more and more prescriptive. But it's more binary now. You're either showing up or you're not showing up. But luckily, there actually are things that you can do to show up. I think the other point, which I find really interesting, is that GEO right now represents both in our last episode, we kind of spoke about the different ways to build a brand, right? One is just a company that builds a muscle of short-term arbitrages, and another is those that have the ability to actually build long-term defensible brands. I think GEO actually sits at the intersection of both, simply because today this actually is a heavily ever under-leveraged channel. there's just an arbitrage opportunity. Very few brands are thinking about this, doing it well. And also in the long term, this becomes an enduring asset that I think, as you after said, Andrew. So maybe let's kind of hop into some of those tactical ways to actually optimize showing up. Do you want to list them out? What do you
Yeah,
have
I
in mind here?
do. I think you underscored two really important points there, though. One is it's a mindset shift where instead of being centered around humans that are clicking things, the mindset shift is that you want to optimize for the language model that's assembling an answer and you want it to cite you. So you're actually now optimizing for getting cited by a machine instead of getting clicked by a human, because the victory is not a click. And you actually might end up with less organic traffic, even if it does cite you, because the full answer is contained within the LLM. So that's another mindset shift, is that they might learn about your brand and eventually buy your product, but you didn't have to do all the telling them about it necessarily because the answer was contained within the
Mm.
citation on the LLM. So
So
that's a much
essentially, more of
different
the
thing.
customer journey happens offsite.
Exactly, or at least a lot of it can. A lot of the research phase can happen offsite, and you've got a framework right now about having it on site. So that's a big difference. The second thing you underscored is the arbitrage opportunity, which I love. I think this is really exciting. You've got a quarter of traffic going somewhere where your competitors are unlikely to be thinking about right now. So that is a massive arbitrage opportunity, and that quarter is going to grow every day into something bigger and bigger. So the quicker you can get on top of this, the more substantial arbitrage you can get out of it. So I think this is a huge opportunity. So without further ado, getting to the playbook, and I think the things you can do right now to optimize your GEO presence. And this will be evolving, so we'll make sure we keep everyone up to date on this over time. But here's what you can do right now. The first thing is, and this is similar to SEO, you really want to think like a machine. So when you're creating blog posts or any written content on your website, make sure that it's really well structured. So like clear H1, H2, H3 hierarchies, modular paragraphs, bullet points, lists, all these things that are easily machine readable. The second is go out of your way to show expertise. So the more valuable your answers are or your information is, the more likely it is to be cited. So make sure you show stats, expert quotes, make sure you have outbound links to further resources. Just make sure you position yourself not just as, oh, I'm talking about this topic, but, oh, I'm a subject matter expert here. And this is the canonical writing about this topic. Hopefully your information is good enough that's being cited in other places. Like that still is a big signal of credibility. Next, make sure you're using schema.org markup. So go to schema.org, understand markup, and make sure that everything you're doing is structured. Is not as hard as it sounds. You just go to the site and make sure that you're compliant, basically, because that's going to be the easiest machine readable structures for your content. Fourth thing, make sure you're staying current, because this whole world of LLMs is evolving so rapidly. And last episode, we talked about OpenAI rolling out their shopping feature. That's somewhere where it's a bit of a different way of interacting with an LLM, where you're specifically getting served products and prices with likely a far higher intent to purchase. So keep up to date on what's happening with specific LLMs, especially the really big ones that are getting a lot of traffic, so that you can just adjust your strategy as is necessary. 5, make sure you're writing for two audiences now. You're writing for humans, and you still need to write for humans. There's still a lot of traffic coming from humans, but you're also writing for literal AIs, like actual machines. And so just make sure that when you have a content strategy and you're rolling out content, that you really keep both in mind. So I think it's natural for us as humans to think about the human reader of our content. Now you're also thinking about a machine and wanting to make it really easy for a machine. So that was the schema, and that's clear hierarchical information structures. 6, your tone. There's been a lot of success with tone that is authoritative, so basically confident about your subject matter, but still conversational. So you don't want to sound like it was written by an AI for now. I think 99% of content will be written by AIs in the future, so maybe that becomes less relevant. But for now, positioning yourself as authoritative, so very confident in your subject, but also still conversational, so it feels human. 7, cross-test your content on multiple AI tools. So bookmark all the AI tools and go and run your own searches. I know some of the big SEO tools are pivoting pretty quickly. For now, BrightEdge, SEMrush, and Moz.
There's a new one actually. One of my I'm gonna give a shout out to one of my close friends who just came out of stealth. It's called Brandlight. Congrats, Uri, on raising your new seed.
Amazing.
What I find so interesting is that we have a new interface which is a something you actually chat with. And with this new surface area unlocks problem statements that are, I guess, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, right? So what Brandlight does is they can actually understand how your brand is showing up specifically in different LLMs, right? And I think they help
Awesome.
with that. They don't help with the placement yet, but this is
How do we spell
another way
brand
of
light?
understanding.
Just like it sounds?
Brandlight. I hope just like it sounds for early's sake.
We'll put it in the show notes so that we'll put all these tools in the show notes so that you can go check them out. I'll just do a quick list of the tools. There's kind of four sections of tools that I wrote down that are useful right now and that brands are using with success. There's visibility graders, which basically just show how visible you are in LLMs. There's one called Mangools. That'll be in the show notes if you don't know how to spell it. HubSpot's got an AI search grader now as well. I haven't tried it yet, so if anyone has or does after listening to this, let me know how it is. And then there's the kind of old SEO suites that everyone knows about that are rolling out GEO tools. So that's SEMrush, Moz, BrightEdge has a GPT parser as well. There's of course AI writers that are worth keeping an eye on. Jasper, AirOps, Surfer has an LLM optimization that writes for LLMs. And you can use ChatGPT, of course, to also ask to write for LLMs. So I think where AI writing is at right now, it's really good to have a human in the loop, but to use an AI to help structure your information so that's friendly for AIs, and then you run through it and make it human readable again. And you just go back and forth with the AI or with whatever tool to get that right balance. I think is a really good workflow. And there's schema plugins that you can use with Shopify, for example, or other SEO or other e-commerce platforms. Yoast, which folks might have come across in the past. That's YOAST. There's Rank Math, and there's all-in-one SEO. So those are basically just making sure that your schemas are compliant and going to be the most machine readable. I think it's also worth, if you're really interested in this topic, to go follow some other experts that are talking about this right now. So a few of the folks that I got information from in doing the research that I think are strong and worth following are Jason Bernard, Michael King, Lily Ray, Alita Solis, and Mary Haynes. We'll put links to them in the show notes as well, so you can go follow them. By the way, this is a good time for me to bring up 11 Reader, because if you have a lot of newsletters like I do and don't have enough time to sit there and read them all, I found that I'm driving a lot or I'm walking a lot, and those are not conducive environments to reading. So there's an iOS and Android app from 11 Labs called 11 Reader, which is unreal. You basically, you just press plus, pop in a URL, and it will read you the thing like it's a human in natural language. And you can choose the speed. I did a OpenAI deep research report, and you know how those things are just freaking enormous. And I started to have it read me one of those. And then it's got a podcast option where you can have it create a podcast for you with two people going back and forth. And that thing was incredibly high quality. It got all the really key points right. It cited a bunch of stats. It made it compelling and interesting to hear it in a conversational form. So you can do that in the app as well. So I just feel like right now I'm trying to take in mountains of information about AI, and it's overwhelming. And I feel this need to be able to increase my throughput of learning. And so highly recommend this, especially if you're not an audio learner like I am. Like I really prefer to hear things versus seeing them. And certainly I think newsletters are a great use case for that.
This is it kind of brings it back to what we were talking about briefly at our last episode. Well, how we will all have our own personal procurement officer, right? Like with generative AI, it's unlocked a deluge. It's easier than ever to create content.
Yes.
Content's going towards zero. We live in a world where there soon will be infinite content of every medium. And to parse through all this content now, it really just comes down to the LLM. So with the specific reader you were just talking about, right, it probably reads it verbatim. But fast forward 6 months, 9 months, we will also now have our own personal reader that will give us the specific snippets of the most relevant episodes for us, most relevant blogs for us. It's really interesting. I think it's a new paradigm where before we would kind of go out and try to gather the information, and now as consumers, right, the information comes to us, and it's these GPTs that are actually parsing through the information, and there's a lot of onus on the brands to kind of figure out how these black boxes work.
Yeah, there's actually, I wasn't going to bring this up, but there's a related topic. It really applies to what you just said. And are you familiar with Brett Taylor?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting guy. Was CTO at Facebook, now has a company called Sierra, which is an AI agent company that is worth $4.5 billion based on their last fundraise. His view is that the future form factor of a brand is not a website, it's an agent.
It's a chat, right? They do a bunch of
Yeah.
tell me if I'm wrong here. As far as I understand, Sierra is just essentially a glorified chat on a specific brand's website.
Yes.
Right? That's what it is
Yeah.
today.
I mean, you're belittling it a little bit, but yeah, that's exactly what it is. It is a chat on a website right now. He believes though that eventually that'll be the primary interaction point for humans interacting with your brand and for machines interacting with your brand. Whether or not that's true, he makes a pretty compelling argument. I'll link a little talk he gave recently that breaks down his argument. But I think it's just an interesting thought experiment to think, okay, in that world, what are the right moves to take as a brand today, since that's not the case today? And to me, it's getting good at some of the other things we were going to talk about in this episode. So it's a good segue to the next topic. Natural language search, which is actually, if you think about it, a step in the direction of having an interactive agent. Natural language search is basically getting good enough locally trained models on your store and your brand that search box can then answer really useful natural language questions from website visitors, which is like a step in that. You're still on a website, it's a familiar form factor, you're not chatting with an agent, but you can ask questions like on headphones.com, for example. You could say, instead of having to know the brand and the headphone you're looking for in search, which is still the case on most brands, like you kind of have to know what you're looking for to find it. You could ask questions like best headphones for running or something, and the natural language will understand your intent and then deliver you results based on that, or the basiest headphones or whatever. And the model can be trained on return information, customer review information, all of this stuff to try to pull out the most relevant results. So I think, that was the next topic I was going to talk about, is how to think about natural language search as a brand. And to me, that's like a good step in that agentic direction.
It's a breakthrough here because if I'm correct, we had tools like Algolia or Bloomreach has their own solution. I think Bluecore might have one. They've been around for a while. So what's changed over the last month, 6 months, a year here? What's the breakthrough?
I think those tools are the right track. They're on this track, right? And of course, they have huge incentives to make sure that they stay on the cutting edge. So that might just happen. But the breakthrough is that now the models are getting good enough to get better at understanding intent. So still 60% of e-commerce searches do not bring up a result or the desired result. 60% plus. So if that's the case, I don't know how many of those stores are using Bloomreach or Algolia, but it still means that there's a gap in understanding intent enough of the searcher and delivering relevant results. I guess maybe for some searches there are no relevant results, right? But the breakthrough is the fact that you can now build an entire data set that takes in a lot more signal about your products than just your catalog and your structured data, and have a lot more feed into what's going to serve up the results. I don't know if there's great apps that are doing this really well today, and I'm going to dig into whether I can find one. But you can do as much as use like Google's Vertex and Google's AI Cloud to go and build your own one of these. Not that a lot of people are going to want to get out there and start experimenting with this, but you can go and build your own local search model, basically, that feeds all of your products into it, and then all of this adjacent information that you have as a brand about your products that's not currently being taken into account to help feed searchers better results based on their intent. So I think that's the breakthrough, is that there's a difference between saying I want a bassy headphone and understanding what a neutral response headphone graph looks like. The AI now can understand that and serve the right result to the searcher without me having to had programmed that in to say, oh, bassy headphone searcher is looking for this graph that looks like this of frequency response. I can just have the graph sitting there and it'll be interpreted correctly by the LLM and deliver the right result, which to me is a step change in terms of how you're able to deliver results and match intent of the searcher.
That's really interesting. For as long as I can remember, we've always dreamed of this world of personalized commerce, and it wasn't really possible because A, just the cost of content production was way too high, but also B, because we weren't able to actually understand the meaning behind specific questions or specific queries. It was deterministic rather than actual intelligent. It was, if specific search query has this specific product and matches perfectly, then show up. But we now actually have intelligent LLMs. Content's going towards zero. I think like we're on the precipice. This is why I'm so excited now to be working in commerce and also for this podcast. This specific use case is not only for search, right? It starts at search, But also, once you're able to attach identity to somebody who has a search, you can understand their specific intent, where they are in their life cycle journey, what kind of content they engage with, they don't engage with, and actually create truly personalized journeys on site, off site. Like, this is the future, and it's rapidly accelerating, right?
Totally.
Today, what Andrew's talking about with personalized intelligent search might seem futuristic, but this is, in deployment. And 3 months from now, with the next OpenAI model, it's not only search, it's your entire website, which is, constructed for each and every single individual. And we're actually already seeing companies rapidly grow and monetize, delivering just a sliver of what we're talking about. So another example is Fermat. Essentially, I think they're a really cool company. Huge fan of Rishabh and the team there. They have this personalized commerce, but they personalize these specific funnels that you go through based off of the ads that you engage with. So I imagine, the future is for every single step of the buyer's journey, starting from ad to then search. And I think it's coming very quickly.
Yeah, totally agreed. I think worth, like, even though it's early, getting a little tactical for listeners about how they can start to deploy this stuff now and how to think about it. So just to reframe this, I think you asked what's the unlock, the new unlock. And I think it's, the old thing was to optimize your product titles and product information for pretty much exact match keywords. Algolia and Bloomreach were better at dealing with that and getting more long tail. But I think the longer tail you can get and the better you can match intent, the more you're going to convert. So the new mindset is you're enriching your product content, basically. So FAQs, reviews, return data, basically anything you can get that the LLM can reason properly in delivering and matching intent of the searcher. So, that base heavy headphone example I think is interesting. It's like base heavy might not be anywhere in the product title or the product metadata, but if we had a bunch of reviews that mentioned it was base heavy, then the LLM can reason on that data and deliver the result. And like, that's even better. We might not have surfaced that insight internally because we don't have someone going to comb through thousands of reviews on a product, right? We don't have a way to extract that information, but now our search builds that in and is able to deliver better results than our own customer service people can, for example, who live really close to these products. So super interesting. I think the quick playbook for merchants right now, there's ways you can implement this. There's some app plugins that you can use in Shopify. There's Boost 3.0, Clevu, which is AI search, and then Algolia has neural. So you can drop in app blocks, basically. So there's zero building requirements. I've tried Algolia. We haven't set up the neural side of Algolia, so jury's out in terms of performance. But you can do it the way that I mentioned before too, which is a little bit of a heavier lift, but use Google Vertex AI search for e-commerce. And that's like a server-side API and a Shopify connector. So you can get Google quality conversational refinement, basically, to generate intent-based results. I think maybe worth us getting deeper into implementations of these one of these days for people that are interested, but I'm just going to keep it high enough level for now, and you can go down that path if you want to. Reach out to us if you're curious about it or if you want to report back with results, because I'm super curious about these use cases out in the world. The things you can do today, basically, that are simpler than that are normalize your catalog data. So just make sure you have really good structured metadata. You should have that anyway. And then harvest the user language about products. So pull your existing on-site search logs, support chat questions, reviews, and you can eventually feed that into fine-tuning. A/B test AI search versus classic search. That's going to be fascinating results. I would imagine you're going to see a significant uplift if you've implemented the AI well. I think those are probably the main things I would do today as a brand.
When do you think it makes sense to buy versus build? I'm curious to get your perspective. Or also,
Yeah.
at what scale? Maybe it's how many SKUs you have, maybe it's just revenue, maybe it's a certain quantity of searches.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Who does this matter to? If I'm a brand doing $1.5 million a year, should I be thinking about this?
Yes.
Who do you think this is most relevant for?
To a brand doing 1.5 a year, getting to 3 million is everything, right? And what levers can you pull to do that are going to make a big difference in your business? I think this is one of them. So yeah, it certainly matters, but I also think it totally depends on your individual case. If you are technical or you have technical resources, go out and experiment and build things in your dev store and see if you can get them to work effectively. I personally think there's so much value in learning how to build AI tools as a brand that it's worth, for simple things where there's APIs out there that you can plug into, it's worth building that muscle of how can I own this and have some autonomy over it. But if you don't have the technical ability and you don't want it, and you're out there thinking about how I could survive with the tariff uncertainty, when I just don't realistically have the resources to go dedicate to this kind of experiment, buy it. I think buying it is better than nothing. Making it yourself in this case is probably the best outcome, because the tricky part is not in the implementation, it's in the LLMs and it's in the APIs, and those things are solved problems basically that you can go and use. So to me, if the tricky part was in the implementation, then you probably want to buy a product for someone who's thought deeply about that implementation. Whereas you're using existing technologies that are like utilities to create an outcome. I'm a bit of an outlier because I'm fascinated with the technology too. So I'm more likely to want to go experiment and try to build things myself just to see where the boundaries are, and also to be able to fine tune things to work the way that we want them to. But I think there's a lot to do with the transition to AI as a merchant and as a brand. So you need to be realistic about what your resources are, and if an out of the box tool is going to perform well, go for it.
I think the answer is what you're saying is that for most everyone, it's relevant. If you're a brand that has PMF and has a non-insignificant number of searches that are showing up with zero results, this is probably for you. It's low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Basically, what you want to track is SCR, is search conversion rate. So track that and your zero result rate. Your search conversion rate should go up and your zero result rate should trend towards zero as you get better at this. And both those things directly lead to more revenue and conversion. So they're upstream metrics from the results you want as a brand.
Okay, this is super helpful. So just to recap here today, we spent most of the time talking about generative engine optimization. Do you want to kind of quickly list out for us the key takeaways there, key tips? And then we'll kind of get the key takeaways as well for the improvements in natural language search.
For sure. Yeah. So just to wrap it up, the 7 things I think you can do today for GEO is: 1, think like a machine. So clear hierarchies and structured information. 2, show expertise. So stats, quotes from experts, outbound and inbound links. 3, use schema.org markup in your content. 4, make sure you stay current, hit our show notes and go and subscribe to some newsletters and keep up to date with the changes as they happen. 5, write for 2 audiences and try to balance that. You're writing for machines and you're writing for humans. 6, keep your tone authoritative, confident, but conversational. 7, make sure you test across multiple AI tools to see what's getting cited. You just want to keep yourself honest about your results, see how those are changing. And of course, you can go and use some of the tools that we're going to list and report back with your results to help track your success. Just before we wrap up, is there any cool like non-commerce based AI tool or use case you've been using? I gave you 11 Reader, which I snuck into the episode, but curious if you found anything cool lately.
I think I'm a bit late to the game here. Have you heard of Cal AI?
No, I haven't. Tell me about it.
So I've recently started working out again. As you can see, I'm looking much more defined than the last episode.
Versus last week. Yeah, much more jacked.
Yes.
We're gonna have to do a time lapse over all these episodes to show you get more and more jacked.
Essentially, Cal AI, you take a picture of whatever you're eating, and it tells you how many calories are inside of it. I don't think that this is going to be a durable company in terms of building enterprise value, because it'll be easy to rip off. But as an end consumer, this is an awesome product.
Downloading it right now.
Had never before been regimented and actually kind of tracking my intakes.
Do you trust the results? Like, you feel like it's accurate?
Directionally, definitely it's not 100% accurate, but something is better than nothing.
I've tried to count calories at so many points during my life, and it's something that lasts when you're at peak motivation for me. Yeah. And then it's the first thing to fall away when like life gets busy or I travel or whatever it is. So I think this makes that easy and takes away the friction.
It definitely minimizes the friction. You have to have some now, rather than tracking the calories or Googling or whatever it might be, or inputting the specific meals, you just take a picture. So it's way easier. So we'll see as we do the 3 months from now how I'm looking. And
okay. Well, now I'm signing up too, so it'll be both of us. I've now downloaded it effectively, and it is.
Wow! Look at
boom.
That. We're locked in.
We're locked in.
All right. Well, that's a wrap, everyone. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week.